there's three types of magical practices that Hollywood represents. Just this is getting back to history. So, so Hollywood has, and this is very general. Of course, people will say, "Oh, there's an exception," but generally speaking, you have witches in fantasy who just are magical. It's fantasy. This is magic. You know, that's like the Wicked Witch of the West. That's like Glinda. You know, it's like magic just exists. Okay, no explanation whatsoever. Then you have witches who live in the real world, but have somehow inherited a practice physically. There's something, and that would be like Carrie. She was telekinesis. Spitfire with Katharine Hepburn. She was a faith healer. They're usually faith healers of some sort, but some way they've inherited this magical ability. It's biological, okay, let's say. So you might say Sabrina is kind of like that, but that's more fantasy. So she's just exists. So these witches that have a biological power, it's usually ascribed to either a divine source. There's a great movie called Resurrection, where it's an accident that gives her healing power. So there's that type of magic. And then the third type of magic is the satanic ceremonial kind. That's the kind you learn. So a witch is not a witch, and then she gets pissed off because a boyfriend dumps her, or you know, she's been shunned in some way, and it's usually caused by a man. Honestly, most of these narratives, the witch gets pissed off because the woman gets pissed off because some man has shunned her in some way, right? Justifiably or not justifiably, it depends on the narrative. But she gets pissed off, and then she goes to another witch, a crone usually, and she says, "I got to learn magic to get revenge." So she learns magic. Now that's one form of learning magic, but it's ceremonial. It's not something biological. It's something you learn to do. Okay, you learn to get your power. So a great example of that is a Twilight Zone episode called Jezebel, which I absolutely love, where this young girl she's a poor young girl from a farm, wants to marry this rich guy. He totally plays around with her and then decides he's going to marry the rich girl. So she's pissed. So she goes to the mountain witch, crone, who she sacrifices her soul, says, "You can have my soul, just give me the power to win this guy over." Well, that happens, you know. So this is Twilight Zone, of course.
My favorite show as a kid. So
I know, right? So it's Twilight Zone, so fun. So she gets her power, becomes a witch. So that's the other type of witchcraft. It's a learned witchcraft. You see that in horror films. The scorned witch also appears. The learned witch also appears in a lot of paranormal witch films. Ghost witch films is what I call. So it's the witch who was hung because they thought she was a witch. It's the witch who was the classic witch who was scorned by some other man, had a baby, and then then the man didn't want anything to do with it, so she gets pissed off, she's killed, so as a ghost she comes back. So that kind of witchcraft is all learned. So you have the learned witchcraft, you have the one that's given by divine intervention, and then you have fantasy witches who just are, those are, yeah. So there's different types of ways Hollywood represents the way magic is, and that's power, their power, a woman's power.